Bob Condotta covers the Seahawks for the Seattle Times, kind enough to join us after last night's festivities. What was the build-up like this past week, Bob, to this matchup?
Pretty much what you'd expect. I mean, obviously a lot of excitement and eagerness, and a lot of people curious to see how this was going to turn out with Russell coming back. I mean, he's by far, I think, no offense to Matt Hasselbeck, but I think he's the best quarterback in team history, and probably about the most important player in team history, with being the finishing piece on the team that won the city its only Super Bowl. But obviously there was a lot of contentiousness over the last 2 years, basically, and leading up into the trade. So. There's a lot of mixed and conflicting emotions, and I think you saw that come out at the stadium last night.
I guess I was a little bit surprised, and I know this is outside looking in, and that is there was really no acknowledgement or tribute to Russ prior to the game. It felt like as soon as he walked out, that was it. We don't know who you are. We don't care who you are. And I was just wondering about that even when Brady went back to New England, I mean, they did give a little bit of a video tribute to him. So why was there no grace period or hey, we'll spend 3 minutes, now we move on and you're the opposition?
Yeah, I didn't ask that question specifically of anybody, so I guess I don't know if the organization considered it. But I think that goes in a little bit with Pete Carroll's always compete kind of thing. That that he's on the other side now, and that there'll be a time and place for doing that. Maybe 10 or 15 years from now when everybody's careers are over. So
that's a long time, Bob.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but as you know better than anybody, Russell sort of wanted out, so I think they're like, are you going to, a guy who wanted out of town, are we then going to just kind of welcome him back with open arms the one time he comes back as the opponent, so I think there's some of that at play here. I think I mean, we all know this wasn't the totally smooth,
but in fairness to Russ, and I don't want to be the Russ whisperer, but, the story that came out in 2018 is they were going to trade. They were going to trade Russ to Cleveland to get, the number one pick in the draft, and they were going to take Josh Allen. So I don't know how close that.
I don't know how close that. I mean, I don't know that was more than about a 3-minute conversation. It was just sort of a, would you actually entertain this? I think that was more of the Seahawks just kind of trying to see if anybody even would do something like that at that time, and just kind of trying to gauge the market.
Well, I thought there was a report that came out that was acknowledged, and also,
Yeah, I'm saying I do think they talked, but I don't think it was we'll do it if you say yes. I don't think it was that close. I think it was more of a, just two GMs talking kind of thing.
But do you think Pete? Like, they didn't even acknowledge each other on the field pregame, I don't think.
They did not pregame. They did after the game, but yeah, they didn't pregame. But I don't know that they were on the field together a whole lot. Russ sort of did his pregame thing, pretty early, and Pete was, and maybe Pete intentionally wasn't out there that early, but a lot of times he's not. The 2 hours prior to the game thing when everybody's out there, and then once the teams are out there doing their things together. But again, I don't. It's pretty obvious, isn't it, to the outside world? This wasn't a happy breakup. So,
yes.
I don't know. If you see your ex-wife at some social function, do you then kind of go up and act like you're best friends? The first time you see them.
Well, I usually do a video tribute.
Healing time is going to be needed here.
Yeah, I would do a video tribute if I was, married before, and I saw my ex-wife. I'd always do that. Okay, so I think a lot of people on the outside looking in thought Seattle, maybe they're tanking, that they didn't really make a move. Their move is they traded Russ and they got Drew Lock, and he's not good enough to beat out Geno Smith. But here you are winning a game. So what is the philosophy of the Seahawks this year in, winning and losing games?
Well, it's to win as many games as they can. I don't know that that's any different than it's ever been. And they've never stated that. They feel like they have a pretty strong roster otherwise. And, I think that's what showed up a little bit last night was their defense. Pete Carroll is, I think Pete Carroll's pretty excited about this team, believe it or not, because I think it's the kind of team that plays the way he wants to play, which, again, is at the heart of the matter of why Russell Wilson is on the other side now. He likes a team that leads with its defense and doesn't turn the ball over, And they didn't really have a strong running game last night, which if there's something from the Seattle standpoint to sort of be concerned about, it's that I think they really wanted to run the ball a lot more and a lot better than they did. Obviously, the second half was a little bit of a slog offensively for them, but a lot of the rest of the things they did, they didn't commit a lot of penalties, they didn't turn the ball over. That's all right up Pete's alley, and I think he thinks this is a team that can do that, and if they could get adequate quarterbacking play, that they can be a competitive team this year. For all the talk of that they just want to try to get a quarterback out of the draft next year, I do think that's certainly in the thinking, but with the two first round picks they have and the 2 second round picks they have, I think they feel like that's something they could get done even without going 2-15 or whatever. That they have the ammo to, and they'll have a ton of cap space with once Russell comes completely off the books next year as well. So that they'll have the cap space and the draft pick ammo to, if they need to make a trade to move up to try to get a certain guy that they want, that they'll be able to do it that way.
How surprised were you that the Broncos went for the field goal as opposed to letting Russ go for 4th and 5?
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. I didn't. I wasn't in the moment. I wasn't even expecting that. I think we were all up there wondering why they're letting the clock run the way they were. It was like, this is really odd clock management. They don't seem to be in a hurry here, and they had the 3 timeouts. So it was definitely curious, and everybody seemed to say the right things afterward on the Denver side. I saw Russell said he didn't think it was a bad decision and all that. So. Who knows? But yeah, I was really surprised by that because 4th and 5 is not that's not 4th and 25. So it's certainly a gettable distance, and there's an awful lot of things that could happen. And so for sure, yeah, I was definitely surprised by that.
How loud was it compared to other games in that building?
There've been an awful lot of loud games. So I don't know that it was any louder than some of the really big games they've played through the years. Like the 2 NFC championship games and some of the other games in that era, but it felt more like that than the games of the past year, certainly. Last year they didn't get off to a great start, and there weren't necessarily a ton of really super exciting moments there last year. So it definitely felt like kind of the primetime games. Certainly the pregame scene was the words a lot of people used was it was kind of surreal with seeing Russell on the other side, and there was certainly some booing directed toward him, and so that was a little bit different than you often see there.
Well, good to talk to you, Bob, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, all right, thanks.
That's Bob Condotta. He covers the Seahawks for the Seattle Times.